Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Advocacy Project Speaker Series. This is our fourth video. I'm Michael Kulish, producer for the Advocacy Project, a student-based startup in Ithaca, New York, teaching you how to wield the power of your voice, because those who speak out stand out. I'm joined today by two very special guests, alums of my hometown of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. First, we have the manager of the Los Angeles Angels, Joe Maddon. Joe Maddon started up the Hazleton Integration Project with my other guest, Bob Curry. For a little bit of background on both of them, Bob Curry and Joe Maddon were both born and raised in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and saw something wrong with the community, and thus took initiative to start the Hazleton Integration Project. Joe used his resources from being the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, the Chicago Cubs, and now the Los Angeles Angels. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Michael.
Glad to be here.
So I'm going to start off with Bob. Bob, you run operations in Hazleton right now. Give us an overview of what the Hazleton Integration Project is and its core mission.
Sure. Well, our core mission is really to bring people in our community together. And what Joe and his wife, Jay, and Elaine and I felt was the best way to do that was grab all of the kids, bring the kids together, and the parents will follow. So what we started to do is provide educational, athletic, and cultural opportunities for children who otherwise might not have those opportunities, mostly from the economically disadvantaged families that comprise a lot of our neighborhoods. So we felt like if we could open a community center, we could bring everyone together. And here we are 7.5 years later, and I think everything has taken off in a way that we may not have even anticipated. So that's our mission. And of course, it's changed quite a bit with COVID-19, but that was our primary goal.
And Joe, what caused you to buy into this mission?
I'll be brief. Jay and I came back there often for Christmas, the holidays. And with this one particular year, I think it was 2010, Bob, is that about right? Or
Yep.
2010, we're driving in from Jim Thorpe, the heights up there by the State Hospital, and coming down the hill. And I was like to drive through the city in my first blush coming back home to get a feel for it. I didn't like anything. It was very dark. And I had realized in the recent past, there was a lot of concern and fear actually on the streets there. And you read about it and the disconnect, all the different things that have been going on, probably about mid-2005, whatever, all the different policies that were put in place really continue to divide. So I was upset. And Bob knows this, and Elaine knows this, and my wife knows it. Jay and I got on the plane and flew back to Long Beach, where I'm at right now. I said, I got to call Bob and Elaine. We got to do something about this because it's not going to change on its own. Eventually it would, yes, maybe like 20 years from now, but we're trying to expedite the change. So he came back and we talked about the best way to do this. And the genesis was Bob took me to Nurka. One of the ladies back there has a daycare center, and we went there for like a brunch on a Sunday, and it was so hectic and fun and very family oriented that I thought, and I said to Bob and Elaine and Jay, it reminds me when we were growing up on 11th Street. It was the same thing. So from that one moment and talking to these folks, we needed someplace for people to gather, kids to gather after school hours, where a lot of them were getting into trouble because parents are out working. So it just seemed right to somehow attempt to create or found a building and a program after school, academically, athletically, culturally, like Bob's talking about. So when the kids got out of school, the parents are working, the kids had a place to go to, and would grow from that. So without getting too crazy, that's pretty much the genesis of it. And everything you've seen after that, it always comes from a thought, right? And you have to stay with it. It's one of those things to have a thought, following through, man, that's where the action happens, and that's where you really accomplish something. A lot of people have wonderful ideas, but you don't follow through. Bob, Elaine, and the group back there have permitted for Jay and I to be able to be more fluid, but still participate. And that's where you're seeing it. The growth is there right now, and it's going to continue to grow.
So I'm going to ask this question to both of you. Hazleton Integration Project puts on a lot of events and fundraisers that specifically enable advocacy. Why is that so important? And what is your favorite event that you've put on?
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, that's kind of a tough question because our events really vary from one to the other so much. But I think there are two events that stand out to us. One of them is called Breakfast with Santa. And by last year, we had about a little over 300 children. We had to feed children breakfast in stages, actually. And so we used the gymnasium for the overflow. And every kid gets to sit on Santa's lap. They get a hot meal and they get two brand new toys. And we've been able to raise the money independently so that these children all go home with some part of what we all consider the magic of Christmas. So that one is really terrific. And then, of course, we have for the adult side, we have the December event that we've been calling it different things every year, but this would have been our 10th year, Joe. So our 10th year, a 10th anniversary for our December events. Last year was called Broad Street Bash, and Joe Namath was with us last year. A couple of years ago, we had Bill Murray, the great actor. So we've had a varied group of people, but all real A-list celebrities, mostly from the sports world, but not all together. And it's become a real social event for many people in the Hazleton area. But beyond that, it's an enormously successful fundraiser. So the money that is raised there through that great good time that we all have is really valuable to run the day-to-day programs.
Joe?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bob's talking about the fundraisers, and the one that's really near and dear to my heart is the Thanksmas project, where we serve, because that was something. And again, I'm real close to where this all came together for me mentally in 2003, 4, something like that. Before I got a job with the Rays, and Jay was at that time my girlfriend. I would ride my bicycle down to Sunset Beach, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, etc. And I'd see a lot of homeless people pushing their life in a shopping cart. And I wasn't a manager yet, so I didn't feel like I had the juice to really do something. But I swore that if I ever got a chance to be a major league manager, that I would. So we eventually got to Tampa Bay, and that's where we started the Thanksmas as a lunch at the St. Vincent de Paul, where we actually cooked it there in order to serve these folks a lunch. And from that, it grew. It's much better. And from that, it grew into up and down the west coast of Florida, all the way down to Naples or Fort Myers, up to Tampa Bay, where we're serving the homeless on a day, normally any day between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's what I wanted Thanksmas, to really illustrate the point that these folks need our help on any day and not just on holidays, because it just seems like we become more benevolent, more giving on holidays, whereas every day of the year 365 is necessary. And that also, I wanted to illustrate or highlight the volunteerism and really encourage. And I really believe it's a worthy goal, is that each family, and I mean each family in each community, one day out of 365 annually, volunteers their service somewhere within the community. I think the benefit of that is perspective. Once you've gained perspective and understand the real plight behind all of this, the reason behind all of this, then you not just going to be accepting in a sense, because you don't want that to happen to anybody, but you have a better awareness of why it's happening. And then you want to become even more giving. You want to become more part of the solution. And it would take one day. I don't know how many times we've had people attend our events and help serve, and they leave changed. We have people just show up just to participate, and others are asking to do that. So it was Thanksmas probably most near and dear to my heart, and we've done it in Hazleton, we've done it in Tampa.
And you know, Joe, just to jump on what Joe is saying right now about it gives you a different perspective. Well, the perspective that we're seeing now because of COVID-19 and the impact on the community, we've changed a lot of what our operation is, and what we do now is we're probably the largest food provider in the city of Hazleton at this point. And so we see a lot of people who maybe in past years have been able to donate to our project. And now those very same people, because of the COVID crisis, are in line waiting for boxes of food to feed their families. And that is such an important lesson for all of us, because we tend to think of, we have set our own course, but things can happen. Consequences that are beyond our own control can come up. And sometimes there, but for the grace of God, go I. And it becomes so obvious when you see the types of things that are occurring because of the COVID-19 crisis.
And that's not unique just to Hazleton either. That's a
Right.
national, international problem. Right? I was just reading about that in a newspaper maybe 2 days ago. That exact concept you're talking about. I was actually going to bring it up, but it's true. And that happened in Tampa Bay when I first started doing this. When we went through that crisis in 7/8, the housing collapse. There was a lot of folks down there that had been givers that were now needed to receive. So yeah, just be careful, folks, with just to stay on top of things, try to do the right thing. And again, if you really want to understand this whole, the magnitude and what's involved with it, go ahead and volunteer a little bit.
Awesome. Bob, this one's for you. Since you oversee more of the day-to-day operations of HIP, have you ever come across a student who has used your resources to better advocate for themselves? And if so, could you share your favorite story of that?
Oh, man. There are so many of them right now because we've developed such strong relationships through some of the local schools and universities. Bloomsburg University right now is doing some terrific things with us. And Penn State University, the main campus in particular, has played such an active role. But what you see is, as our kids, many of the kids that work in the HIP Center are kids that came through our program. And once they reach a certain age, they age out of the program. And so then they become the mentors to the younger kids. And with that mentorship, or is another way of saying advocacy, that's where the real magic happens, because they understand it. They understand how critical it was to them. And then it becomes so important for them to give back. And then in a larger picture, that advocacy creates opportunities and pathways for them to reach their own goals on a personal level. So we see a lot of our kids going to some of the best schools in the United States. And it fills us with such joy, because for us to watch these kids growing up and see where they're ending up, you know, some of them at some of the best schools, Cornell University and places like that, that would make anybody proud, and to play a role in that and watch it happen is really a joy.
Joe, from an outsider's perspective, how do you think HIP has affected Hazleton?
Well, go back to when we began this. There was a lot of resistance, believe me. As you could imagine, you know, Bob heard this stuff all the time because he was there, and I absorbed a lot of it too. A lot of the folks that had been living there for a long time. Why are you trying to help these people? Why are you doing that, Joey? You know, and I'd get really upset. These people, you know, the industry that I'm in, my first roommate as a minor league baseball player was Dickie Thon, Richard Thon from Puerto Rico. Richard and I lived together in 1976. I also had Raphael Kelly in that same 5-man apartment, just trying to make ends meet. And some of my best friends in baseball, Preston Gomez, who's personal friends actually with Fidel Castro, grew up in Cuba, was a really good dear friend of mine. Was going to be the best man in our wedding until passed away quickly when he bumped his head in a really unfortunate accident. I don't want to go on and on, but the Hispanic community is so similar to our Italian upbringing in that town right there. Really, it was scary. It was weird. I mean, from the beginning, I felt like, you know, these folks could have been from Hazleton, spoke a different language. That was about it. So I've been really tied into this group from the time I met, because before that, as you know, in Hazleton, there was a minority was if you're an Italian kid living in a Polish neighborhood, that was considered racy or crazy or daring at that time. So yeah, it's the people really met with a lot of resistance. The point is now it's going exactly the other way. Um, Getting to the point now, we just look at television, just watch the recent election and the influence with the Hispanic community throughout their country now, and we're finding and seeing it in our hometown. And one of our points was that, listen, these people are going to save our community, and you're trying to repel them. They're here to save it. They're young. They're young. They have families. They want to work. They work hard. They're so similar to the people that we knew growing up. And you're trying to kick them out of here. You're trying to push them away. But I think it's finally understood now, where businesses realize the potential or positive influence that this group has had within our community, just by purchasing whatever goods and services. But at the same token, now they're establishing their own businesses, and that's what we need. We need more vibrant storefronts. We need Broad Street to prosper again. Wyoming Street needs to look like it had in the past. All those things have to come back. And the arts, we have an established arts center now downtown. We've been a big proponent of the arts. All these different things since 2010, when we were like pretty much land-based and were attempting to do this. Now we're actually like ahead of the northeastern Pennsylvania curve, and I think to some extent throughout the United States in regards to forward thinking, which is unfortunate that's considered forward thinking. But we were on top of this early on, and so Bob could talk about this too. One of our original concepts was to be able to set this up and do it properly so that we can help or aid other communities on how to do this. We were that confident we'd be able to nail it down. And I've had different people inquire. Bob probably knows more than I do, but it's all of that, man. And now we're arrived at this point. We're becoming kind of a national model. And that was part of our original objective.
Yeah, it's funny also, Joe, that you're mentioning the way the city really needs to come together, and there's still work to be done. But make no mistake, the city has changed in so many positive ways. It's a funny thing for me because I worked in the Wilkes-Barre area for 30 years, and the people from Wilkes-Barre now and the people from Scranton as well, I run into them frequently in Hazleton, and everybody's telling me, this is now the hippest city of the three. And it's so funny to hear that, because we were always like the lost stepchild. The appendage was Hazleton. It was Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Hazleton. But now there is a sense of vibrancy and a sense of life. And we're the youngest community out of those three. We were the oldest previously. And as Joe mentioned, all these families, young children, the commerce part of it. And it's really a much more vibrant community than it was 15 years ago. And that's, I think, one of the things that made what we were doing so interesting was we were up there saying, when everybody else is like, we want Hazleton to be what it was, Joe and I and his wife and Elaine are all saying, no, you guys got this all wrong. We want all of these people to come in here because we know how much better this city is going to be. And sure enough, we're 7.5, almost 8 years into this experiment. And I think there are very few people at this point in time that would denigrate what our efforts were and what the success rates have been for not only just for our organization, but for the community as a whole.
What are some of the future plans you have for HIP?
The funny thing is people, and I know that Joe feels this way as well. I never even have to ask. And with Elaine and I, people say, oh man, you guys have done such a great job. Congratulations. And it's such an odd idea to us. We never sit around ever and think, oh, look at this good thing we have done. It's always, how can we get better at this? What types of things can we do to have more of an impact in the community? When you ask what the goals are, or continuing goals, how about this, Michael? People say, oh, well, you've got this big building and you're serving hundreds of kids every single week, and that's terrific, except for the fact that there's 12,000 students in the Hazleton School District. How many more could we serve if we had multiple locations? how important would it be, as Joe said, if we are ahead of the curve in Northeast PA? What about expansion? What about doing a center, not for us, but for teaching a community how to do it in the Wilkes-Barre area, the Scranton area, the Easton area? And those are all places that have approached us. And we are happy to work with any organizations that really want to put the time and the effort and the energy and the love into a project. And so when we look at our future, that is what we see. We see expansion, we see connecting with other organizations and bringing that same kind of vibrancy and life into their communities.
Let me ask you this, Bob, too. Isn't it tantamount to what happened, or as we grew up, there was Our Lady of Grace, there was St. Stanislaus, there was MPB, there was Holy Trinity. I mean, there was all these different community centers, basically, all the different parishes had their own parochial school that were attended, religiously by the locals there, and then the schools and the basketball teams and of the summer festivals,
the playgrounds too.
At the playgrounds, where we were a big part of that, all of that. And we're just talking about one entity within the city that's, like Bob's pointing out, attempting to serve the whole thing, where in the past we had the whole city was served in small pockets. And that's where that's where you're going to get this desired outcome of this really closely knit community, where there's some like competition within to make yours better than theirs. And that was healthy. That's good. Competition's always healthy. So when you talk about the expansion, if you really break down Hazleton 30, 40 years ago, there was all these little pockets or community centers all over the town, and they were known as parishes.
Yep, that's true.
All right, drawing a little bit back from Hazleton now to a much wider scale. Joe, have you seen a change in advocacy over this past summer, and really in your over 20 years of managing experience in Major League Baseball amongst the players?
Advocacy in regards to?
Advocacy in regards to players standing up for their own causes, making foundations, etc.
Well, this past summer, obviously, when it came to just social unrest or social injustice, that's the first time I've seen baseball players really take a social stand publicly in that regard. So I think that genie's been let out of the bottle. So you're going to see, because of that one instance, more outspoken major league players, which probably is going to result in advocacy when it comes to personal foundations. I know guys have talked to me about it. When I was with the Cubs, it was pretty prominent. And Mr. Ricketts actually encouraged the guys back then to start their own foundation. If you needed help, to come see him. And actually, Anthony Rizzo's foundation is enormous right now. And it started by him walking into Mr. Ricketts' office and Mr. Ricketts and his family helping him with that. I just think in general, social consciousness is really being stirred to the point now where the typical baseball player who normally would never speak his truth, you're going to hear a lot more of that. I think it's more obvious, prominent in basketball and football. For whatever reason, baseball is kind of held back. My part of my take on that is because we play every day. When you play 162 games, you don't have a lot of time to advocate or really become involved in something other than the next night's game. Whereas football plays once a week, basketball a couple nights a week. These guys have more time to put their minds in other areas. But I think now with baseball, what happened this last year, and just a lot of the athletes that I've gotten to speak with via Zoom, I had a lot of Zoom conferences this past season. And a lot of it was to address a lot of these different topics. And the one conclusion I drew and was able to really promote in these calls was to speak your truth. Whatever your truth is, speak to your truth. And when it comes down to making your decisions, it's got to be based on your value system. So those are the 2 points that I really drove home, and it made sense to these guys. Think about it. These baseball players, and me, a lot of us, we didn't know what we thought. You think you know, but you don't. You got to drill down and really understand, okay, what do I think about all this? And if I'm asked the question, how do I respond to this? A lot of it would have been extemporaneous. A lot of it would have been not complete in a way that you'd always get trapped. I didn't want my guys to feel trapped when they gave a response that they were trying to be visceral and honest about. So we discussed it, and it came down to values and to speak your truth. And once the guys got into that concept, that thought, it made it a lot easier for them to be more open about what they thought.
People say that advocacy accessibility has become much more prominent in the age of social media. What do you think Major League Baseball can do to make accessibility for advocacy for its players more prominent in the league?
Well, again, it's just, when it comes down to social media, obviously it's here to stay, and you want to be able to do it in a way, I think, and again, it really comes down to vetted versus unvetted information. It comes down to whenever you want to talk or say something, you'll be able to say it in a way, and that's what I was talking about, having a strong understanding of what you believe in before you say it. And if you do, then you can put your thoughts out there. And if you don't have a strong understanding of what you believe or think, and you attempt to put your thoughts out here, then here comes the repercussions back. You're unable to defend yourself. I guess the point I'm trying to make is MLB really, and they've done this, and I've made these suggestions. It really comes down to like training, really getting together with guys, and we've had like media training, but that's almost dinosauric. That's almost like so, 18th century almost compared to where we're at right now, because the speed of information is so lightning. And it's so easy for guys to mess up regarding what they're thinking because they just don't know. I mean, Drew Brees ran into that trap this past football season too. So I think the advocacy would be, for me, would be training and awareness and understand before you put it out there, really drill down and think it all the way through. And what you do, even if it's controversial, I'm good. As long as you know and you could support and believe in what you're talking about, go for it, man. I'm into it. But when people just throw stuff out there haphazardly without having thought it all the way through, that's the perception, that's the look I don't think anybody wants to give. So the more MLB can do to really have players understand what it takes to, for lack of a better term or way to describe it, is to really understand your thoughts before you throw them out there and believe in them and support them. And then regardless, controversial or not, go for it, man. I think that would be the best way for us to help our athletes feel better about themselves as they speak about issues, topics. And I believe also, if you're able to do that, your performance will improve because you're not going to have this disconnect going on internally that really takes away from your performance.
Going back to Respect 90, what are your future plans for that foundation?
Well, to continue to grow. I mean, we're pretty much, it's kind of saturated. There's a lot going on annually. This year we've been cut back because of obviously the COVID reasons, but just if we could just repeat annually what we've been doing to this point, because a lot of, when you're talking about Respect 90, it's a fundraising situation. We're trying to bring as much money in so we could put it back out there into the communities at large. I mean, we've done our golf tournaments, we've done our events like Bob talked about with Joe Namath and Mike Ditka and Bill Murray and that particular group. Whatever we can do creatively to bring in some dough to distribute it back out. We're always open to new suggestions, but I think honestly, I mean, based on what I do every day and the time involvement, and then you put, what Bob and Elaine have to do just to run the center back there and then help, and all this, my sister and Frank Gratis and all these people that help us out. I think we have like a nice little, our own little cocktail working right now of different events that, as long as we're able to perform them once we're through with COVID, we'll be able to fund this foundation in a way that helps support the Hazleton Integration Project, as well as our Thanksmas program. We do youth boxing. We've done youth boxing in Chicago and back in Hazleton. There's a variety of different pediatric cancer. We shave our heads during spring training. How about one spring training when I was at the Cubbies there, the group, the players, $100,000 in 2 hours donated. That eventually led to a treatment center, a treatment room at the Card Banner Children's Hospital in Mesa to become less institutionalized, where kids could go in there, get their cancer treatment, and then follow it up by receiving a gift because of the generosity of my players with the Cubs. So these are the kind of things. We're always looking for new ideas or methods or thoughts in order to raise funds. But I think we got a nice little concept going on that I just want to continue to grow.
This question is for both of you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so these are basically your closing remarks. But it's a very simple question. In regards to both Hazleton Integration Project and Respect 90, what keeps you going?
Good, Bob. Because listen, and I'm going to tell you this. Jay and I, we do our thing, but these are the guys that really get this stuff done. Bob and Elaine and the group back there at the building at MPB, that is now the Hazleton One Community Center. Boots on the ground matter, folks. Boots on the ground always matter. And I have so much respect for that, and I get it. So this is something that I think Bob and Elaine, because it's easier for Jay and I to continue with this, but if you're involved in the day-to-day, a little bit more difficult.
Well, thanks for those kind words, partner, but it truly is a partnership. We can't do it without Joe and Jay being intricately involved. We're constantly in touch. We're not only during the off season, but little things. When Joe was talking about something, how busy baseball players are, their time is so conscripted. It's an amazing thing. When the schedules come out, the day that the schedule comes out is the day we start looking at what events can be held when. And there's usually no more than one or two choices. Maybe you have one day, and this year it was exactly one day that we could do a golf tournament. So that's the day we do the golf tournament. We run it through the Angels, but these guys are really busy. So to understand what it is to give up a day off for these guys to do their advocacy, to make a difference in the world is really extraordinary. As far as what keeps us going here at the Hazleton Integration Project, I have a great story to tell you. We did this event. It was beautiful, kids singing and dancing. It was a musical play, and it was all kids between 8 and 12 years old. And they weren't very good, and they're dancing their hearts out and singing. Full house, all their parents, grandparents, completely diverse crowd. Half of the crowd is Latino, half of the crowd is Anglo. And at the end of this older fella, even older than Joe and I actually, came over to me and he said, thank you so much. And I didn't really understand what he meant. He spoke with an accent, I heard it, but I'm like, oh yeah, the kids were great. And I was just kind of looking towards the next thing. And he took my hand and he held it. And he said, no, I mean this. This is important. All we ever wanted was to see your children and ours dance together. What keeps you going? You have that moment. It's magic. What you understand is whatever things you have, whatever you have acquired, is like nothing compared to what you give. It is so true. It is through giving that makes us whole. That's it.
And with that, thank you.
Top it. You got it.
For giving your time on a Saturday afternoon to come on this Zoom call and be interviewed by Cornell Advocacy Project. Thank you both.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Thank you.
That's it
Be
from
in
us.
touch, Joey.
You guys be well. Thank you very much.
Be well.
Take care. See you.
Take care.
Thank you for watching our content. I hope you enjoyed yet another conversation brought to you in part by the Advocacy Project from Cornell University, where we make it our mission to teach the basic skills in persuasion, public speaking, and effective communication to anyone with an internet connection. To learn more about our story, make sure to check out advocacypro.org. Again, that's advocacypro.org, linked in the bottom left corner and in the description, where you can take the first steps in wielding the power of your words, even when those of others might falter. Until next time, thank you for listening. If you want to contribute to Hazleton Integration Project, please tune in to the Big Red Advocacy Telethon of Love, which we are putting on this Saturday at 9 a.m. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day.